A Manic Pixie Dream Girl is a type of female character depicted as vivacious and appealingly quirky, whose main purpose within the narrative is to inspire a greater appreciation for life in a male protagonist. I spent a lot of my life being the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. In every relationship, friendship, role, job, I tried to be whoever someone else wanted me to be. I wanted to be that perfectly vivacious and appealingly quirky girl for everyone. Then one day, during my millionth tearful viewing of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, I realized I couldn't be the side character anymore. I, a former Manic Pixie Dream Girl, was going to be fully me, and I wasn't going to be sorry for any of it. This album is that story. I think I first started getting into music when I think I was 3, and then my mom had the CD of Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, and much to her dismay, I learned every single word. That kind of became a pattern through the rest of my life of just listening to albums over and over and over and trying to learn every single word that I could. When I was 10, my parents bought me my first guitar. When I looked at the box, I thought it was going to be a keyboard, and I was super excited, and then I opened it and it was a guitar. I started going to lessons when I was 10, and my dad was amazing and brought me to every single one, and in those lessons I learned everything from like Jack Johnson to Led Zeppelin, just kind of learned everything that I could. I started writing when I was 13, and it was mainly just singing about my feelings and acoustic indie, very shy and kind of withheld. From there, I kind of was in choir throughout school. Never really took music seriously. It was just always something that I did to kind of kill the time or express myself or to just feel things, and it was a very private thing for a very long time. My parents really got me into oldies, 70s folk rock, and then my sister was the one who exposed me to a lot of emo and pop punk music. We listened to a lot of CDs where we ripped music from Napster and listened to it in our crappy Mercury Explorer. I had just a lot of different, very eclectic sounding music. It kind of felt like you were listening to a lot of different radio stations all at once, but that's kind of how I liked it.
Living life in exile, in this way for quite a while. Used to be one of you, full of hope and simple platitudes. If you saw me now,
chickened out from going to school for music. I just felt like the people who were really good at music, usually they would play a song and everyone would just do this thing where they'd react and say, wow, she's so good. And no one ever did that with me, and so I just felt like, oh, maybe I'm just not that great. And so in college I just, I went to an in-state school and I majored in journalism and kind of felt like I was gonna kind of go that route. And so I kind of took a break from writing, but I still definitely played music just to feel something. And so there was a lot of nights in my sorority of just playing in the basement, but I definitely, didn't write for a long time just because of that. Just trying to find my way and find out who I wanted to be. Writing again after I graduated from college. It was in this time where I moved back to my hometown, lived alone for the first time ever. I had a lot of time to myself. I was working a job I kind of hated, the ultimate, you get out of college and you get this cool startup job. But it was not very fulfilling. So I just had all this free time and I was living by myself anyway. And so I figured I would just start writing. I felt a lot of emotions, and when you live with other people, it kind of gives you this buffer to where you don't really have to feel much. Because I lived alone, that buffer was gone, and so I could feel all the things all the time, and I had nothing to distract me. During that time period, it was really tumultuous. Lots of heartbreak, lots of loneliness, lots of I don't know who I am or what I'm doing, which is very characteristic of your 20s. And so I just started writing again because it was kind of out of necessity. I just felt like I had to get some of those feelings out, and that felt like that was the only way I could do it, and that was the only way I knew how.
Old wounds, I've got lots of old wounds. Like a scar on my left knee and a deep bruise that you can't see. And habits, I've got lots of bad habits. Biting my nails and chewing my tongue, forgetting the way from which I'd come from. I know you don't have to tell me so. Yeah, I know you don't have to tell me so. Sometimes I gotta pull off the band-aid before you're ready to heal again. Sometimes I gotta get a little worse before it gets good, babe. This time big tears, I've got lots of big tears. Like crying out in empty rooms with no one there except the moon. And big fears, I face lots of big fears. Like diving deep into the dark and loving so hard and left a mark and falling so fast, left a scar. Sometimes you gotta
I started just going to random like open mic nights in Boise, and so I picked just really random bars. Whatever bar had an open mic night, I went to. It just gave me a lot of reps of playing for people who didn't care that I was playing. Because of that, when I started playing, I started noticing when people would actually hush when I played, and that was the best feeling ever. From there, I started playing, you know, gigs around town to private parties. I felt like I had said no to music enough times to where if I said no again, I knew I would never really do it or go for it. And at that point in my life, I really didn't have much to lose, and I was like, well, I can just go for it and see what happens. Being in the studio was very different than I imagined. I felt like because I didn't go to school for music, that somehow that would be a barrier, and that when I got into the studio I wouldn't be very good, or that I wouldn't keep up with the musicians I was playing with. But when I got there, it was cool because it was a very collaborative process. Like, it wasn't all on me to make these songs awesome. And so when I got into the studio, it was cool because I watched my songs, which started out as like either a cool riff or a cool chord progression or a combination of the two, and just these melodies and lyrics that I had, you know, always owned and always taking with me wherever I went. All the influences I grew up with, you know, the Fleetwood Mac and the pop punk that I listened to, and all the Florence and the Machine and the Death Cab for Cutie, all of it started weaving its way into the songs. And so these songs became really eclectic and almost like very textured and layered very quickly. I always pegged myself as someone who sung a lot of sad girl acoustic indie stuff, and I felt like that's what my songs would be. But when we got in the studio, they became a lot more, definitely more rock and roll, but more nuanced than that. Just felt like a lot of different influences started weaving themselves into the music, and that was really, really cool to watch. I had to really experience that. I hadn't really played with bands before, so.
Why are you still haunting me? Why can't you just set me free? These ghosts are trapped inside my heart, just tearing me apart. Oh my love, I must confess, I'm laying you here to rest. They call out in the dark of night, try and tell me you were right. They just lie every time. I have to close my eyes. It's no use living in the past, missing what I had. There is no what was, what used to be. Why are you still haunting me? Why can't you just set me free? These ghosts are trapped inside my heart, just tearing me apart. Oh my love, I must confess, I'm laying you here to rest.
Because of the title of the album, Manic Pixie Dream Girl, of course the songs are gonna try to be a lot of different things, and I feel like that is kind of what being in your 20s is like, is that you try to be so many different things to so many different people. These songs kind of track the evolution of not only my music and my taste and all the music I was learning at the time, but also who I was as a person.
You are haunting me. You've got hold of my soul. You've got hold of my soul. I have to just let this go. I have to just let this go. I have to just let
Manic Pixie Dream Girl is essentially, it's kind of a trope that gets used a lot in films. She's a romantic love interest in a movie. Her whole point throughout the entire movie is to make the male protagonist, who she's in love with, a better person and to evolve into a better person. And you watch these movies and it's great and you see all this character development from the guy, but then you realize by the end of the movie, you didn't really get to know the girl at all. There's a lot of moments in my life where I got into certain interests, or I wore certain clothes, or I talked a certain way, or I acted a certain way just to make other people feel more comfortable and ideally to make people feel more inspired. Especially when I lived by myself and I had no one around anymore, I realized that I didn't know who I was anymore.
I'm not gonna be your manic pixie dream girl. Guess you better settle down and find yourself a nice girl. 'Cause I'm not gonna be your manic pixie dream girl. No more, no more, no more. Sorry that I complicated simple words. 'Cause I'm not simple. Flying to the bear, streaking 'cause I didn't care. Those rules are always so unfair. I ask millions of questions, answer with confessions. Lying, saying you're not like the best. Up to safe, scared of your own fate, wondering if you're right too late. Why does it always seem like I know you more than me? 'Cause I'm not gonna be your manic pixie dream girl no more. Guess you better settle down and find yourself a nice girl. 'Cause I'm not gonna be your manic pixie dream girl no more, no more.
All the songs in that album illustrate that process of identifying all the different ways I've tried to be someone else and then trying to figure out, okay, well, if I'm not any of these things, then who am I really? And I think that's why a lot of the songs have they're a little eclectic and a little manic, because there's so much discovery within that. And I don't know, and to some extent too, you really are all of the different pieces of you, and that's also okay. But you have to decide for yourself who you want to be, and I think that's kind of the overarching story of the album, is that process.
'Cause I'm not gonna be your manic pixie dream girl no more. Guess you better settle down and find yourself a nice girl. 'Cause I'm not gonna be your manic pixie dream girl no more, no more, no more. Sorry that I complicated simple words. 'Cause I'm not a simple girl. 'Cause I'm not an easy girl. 'Cause I'm not a stupid girl. 'Cause I'm not a shallow girl.
I think a lot of times we're defined by the roles that we serve. The Manic Pixie Dream Girl, her story remains largely untold, and I think I want this album to kind of share that story, and ultimately to share, I don't know, to like share my own story, and for it to be honest and real. And your story is gonna be really messy, and that's just kind of the point. You don't really need to filter yourself and, achieve a certain aesthetic just so it pleases people. Music can be this really amorphous thing, and people can be that way too.